To me, a human body it's an incredible machine, and it's made to be bloody well used, not sat in front of the telly or sat behind a screen. It's an amazing thing. It will do amazing stuff. Use it. Alphas, welcome back to the show. Andy Naylor here, CEO and founder of Naylor Body Design, host of your Optimal Alpha podcast. We are back once again with another Versus. Now, today's Versus is extremely person-specific, dependent, and goal-specific and dependent. It's nearly an impossible Versus to do, which is why I thought, well, I'll have a crack at it. And it's an interesting one because it is an old debate that we hear quite a lot, which is cardio or no cardio. How on earth do we even begin to try and unpack this? Because it's really dependent on, to start with, on what someone's goal might be. But either or, I thought, well, you know, I've had about 5 espressos. Why not dive in and have a go? So cardio versus non-cardio. So first of all, it could be just general steps, movement, although I think most humans should just be doing a certain amount of steps per day, and that's just probably the end of that. We could also add in playing a sport, although then we've got the enjoyment of sport, the camaraderie of being in a team. So I'm going to put that to one side. So sport playing, I would put in a different category. Really, to me, cardio, for the sake of today's conversation, will be treadmill, bike, rower, Stairmaster, that sort of machine-based cardio, and maybe doing more steps than would be your average. That's kind of the angle that I'm coming in on. So let's have a go. Okay, cardio, what are the positives? Okay, well, it would generally add additional daily movement to certainly the type of clientele that we help, which is busy professionals. Busy professionals, for the most part, tend to sit at a desk behind a computer screen. Now, I fall into that category. If I didn't get up in the morning, so I was up, I was about 3:30 this morning. That's just a different conversation, but I was up at 3:30. I was in the gym at 4:45. I trained legs and did 30 minutes of walking straight afterwards. It's now hours later, and I've been sat here quite happily working away, but it's probably been another 4 hours. So what I mean is, it's very easy for busy business owners to be just sat doing nothing. If I didn't not force myself, but if I didn't get that done early in the morning, it could be really easy for me to just not move, literally. Now, so getting up and doing some sort of cardio, and again, additional steps to above the average or some actual cardio, I think just increases overall daily movement. I don't know how that can possibly be a bad thing. For moving, to posture, given that most people are sitting at chairs. Positives. If somebody's trying to lose weight, cut fat, which is most people in the world, given that certainly in the States, I forget how many million, something like 77 million adults are obese, 90 million overweight, 42% of people are obese. So there's clearly an epidemic of being overweight and being too fat. And so most people, therefore, are looking to trim up. So cardio the cardio in of itself isn't going to be the thing that burns body fat. It's just going to increase a caloric deficit. So it's just a tool. Food is a better way to do this. It's easier to cut 500 calories out by not eating it than it is to burn it off by doing cardio. But cardio will help. Doing cardio is also going to, of course, aid in overall heart and cardiovascular health, because you're just moving blood around, you're increasing, oxygenation, you're increasing your respiratory rate. It's just going to improve fitness. By being completely sedentary, not moving around, even if you are resistance training, I would still say a degree of some sort of prolonged cardio or additional steps, it has to have a positive impact on your cardiovascular system. If done in the morning, therefore maybe even outside, I would then put this into the bracket of winning the first hour, which I think is something that we talk about with our clients a lot. If you can win the first hour of your day, you're rolling, right? And I'm not going to go into what that is. I've definitely done a whole episode on winning the first hour. But if you're outside, you're walking, so you're getting movement in, you're probably getting sunlight in your eyes, and you're probably getting some fresh air. You may be also getting some water in and educating yourself with a podcast. That to me is like winning the first hour. So getting up and getting outside and maybe going for a walk in the fresh morning air to do additional cardio. It could be a bike ride, that could be walking, whatever. Could be hill sprints, whatever your jam is. I think if done outside, could be really useful in the morning. I think cardio in of itself can certainly help reduce stress and anxiety. It can in and of itself also, it is a stressful activity. So there's a sweet spot. I think we've worked with enough endurance runners over our time to know that, huge endurance certainly can have a negative impact on cortisol and can become extremely stressful on the body. So we're not talking about people who are doing, extreme long distance running, because that is a stressor of itself. For the most part, people doing some sort of cardio, regular cardio, additional steps, I think while doing that, certainly here's an interesting one. I remember the last time I prepped for a show, maybe about sort of 3 or 4 weeks out, obviously still had fat to get rid of, but I was very stressed. Anxiety was high because, well, one, doing the show, running a business, everything like that. And it was very difficult to clear my mind. And my wife said, right, we're going out for Sunday. We're going to go out somewhere outside. And we went, I'm sure it's somewhere in Leicestershire called Bradgate Park, I think. And it's basically a big, not national park, but public park. But it's a great big hill. And on the top of it is a monument called Old John. Anybody listening to this from Leicestershire will know exactly what I'm talking about. And it's a nice walk up, but it's not an easy walk. You have to really watch where you're treading. One, because there's lots of animals, so there's animal crap all over the floor, but it's uneven. Therefore, you have to concentrate where you're walking. Therefore, your mind is not on much else. Therefore, it can be really peaceful because you can only concentrate on the one thing that you're doing. Okay. Your mind isn't really anywhere else. And I think that can be extremely useful. Another reason it's useful, again, if done outside, is it opens your field of vision. One of the things that stresses humans out is when we focus too heavily on one thing. Well, that could be looking at our phones. That's really pigeonholing our attention into the tiniest of little things, even computer screens. If you want to reduce your stress and anxiety, widen your field of vision. Have more of a panoramic view. So again, getting outside, walking through nature, in of itself is going to be stress and anxiety reducing. Cardio is also going to aid in your VO2 max. So VO2 max, the way I look at VO2 max, so this is to do with energy usage and consumption and how hard your body has to work in terms of utilizing oxygen. There's a lot of science involved here. Let's just think of it in this way. VO2 max for me is kind of like a pyramid. Picture a pyramid. At the bottom, you've got a base, and at the top, you've got the peak. Well, the VO2 max, the peak is at the top. That's how high that peak is how hard you can, or how well you can perform at high intensity. And I mean high intensity. Okay. And then the base is more your endurance. Okay, so this is where you sort of get cardio zones. And for the most part, people are recommended to sort of work in the sort of zone 2, which is the more endurance-ish area for about 80%. And then right up at maybe the zone 3. I think it even goes zone 3, 4, and 5. I can't remember, but certainly zone 3 upwards, 20%. So you should be doing of your endurance or cardio-based work, 80% should be more endurance, steps, weighted walking, uphill walking, maybe jogging, although I think jogging's a complete waste of time, but that's just my personal opinion. And then 20% should be where you're breathing out your backside. You're really pushing. So one is increasing. So the 80% is increasing the base, and then that 20% is pushing the peak up. Now, if you really want to delve into what longevity looks like, there are a number of factors that we could use as metrics. VO2 max certainly falls in what are those metrics. Cardio can also boost hunger. Now, that's one of those weird ones that it depends what someone's goal is. If someone struggles to get food in and they're actually looking to get more food in, so they're looking to build or even struggling to maintain, cardio, although is burning calories, might actually increase hunger so that someone can get more calories in than they've burnt, which kind of sounds like a backwards way of going around it. But some of you who maybe do cardio will know full well that afterwards you could be extremely hungry. Well, you could have only burnt 150, 200 calories doing the cardio thing. And then it maybe allows you to go off and eat 600, 700 calories because digestion has now been kicked into action a little bit better because you've been moving and not sedentary. And now you can eat more food. So for those who struggle to get food in, the right amount of cardio can really help. I would say also after eating, moving would help. I definitely have slow digestion. It gets worse as the day goes on. So after my last meal, I normally go and walk for 40 minutes, some 30, 40 minutes, which will one takes up time between eating and then going to bed because all I want to do is carry on eating. But it definitely helps digestion. And I think also cardio, again, in some form is going to aid overall recovery from your strength training, your resistance training, dependent on the intensity of the cardio. So if you're doing too much of that 20% zone 3 upwards, that's actually going to hit recovery. It's hard to recover from. But, additional steps, uphill walking, gentle cycling, gentle rowing, all that kind of stuff, I think is going to aid recovery.
Alphas, I interrupt this show with a simple message. This show is here to benefit you and your progression to the best version of yourself. But not only just you, it's also here to benefit the people around you, your loved ones, your friends, other alphas in your vicinity. So why not do a really cool thing today? Something that I would thank you for and maybe someone else would. Share this podcast with at least one other alpha out there who you know would benefit from it. Why not share the information, share the ability for someone else to grow? I'm sure they would thank you. I 100% would absolutely thank you. This podcast only grows by our listeners, our followers doing amazing things like giving us 5-star reviews, downloading podcasts, subscribing, and then of course sharing it with other people. I thank you from the bottom of my heart. Share it with one person and of course drop us a 5-star review, download the podcast and of course subscribe. And now back to the show.
What are the negatives of doing cardio? Well, it can boost hunger. So if you're someone who is struggling to keep food at a low enough level, what you might find is, I'm doing cardio because I want to get, lose body fat, get slimmer, but you're doing the cardio that's say then burning off 200 calories and then you're smashing 800 calories because you're so hungry. Well, for you, we could then say that cardio is maybe not an actual benefit, certainly not a benefit in terms of the goal of actually dropping body fat, because if it's making you too hungry. Cardio takes some degree of time. There is a time investment. Now, it depends what's most important to you and what your priorities are. Time is going to be needed to perform it, though. You could see that that's a negative. And again, if you're doing cardio and it's burning an amount of calories, and you're trying to build muscle, well, then you're going to need to eat more calories to get back through that cardio. I think the net impact of doing cardio has to be positive. I mean, I read you way more positive than negatives. I'm sure there are many others, but those are the ones that come to my mind. The net end result there is doing cardio is going to be, there's more positives than negatives there. But let's look at the not doing cardio. Shorter lists here, quite frankly. The positives of not doing cardio, it takes no time, because you didn't do it. That's pretty straightforward. And again, if you're in a building phase, trying to grow muscle, trying to eat more food, it might mean that you don't need extra food because you're not burning it off. They were about the only two positives of not doing any form of cardio that I could really come up with. We could say, well, if you're injured, maybe you shouldn't be doing it, or if recovery is really low, you shouldn't be doing it. But then I would say, well, you just keep moving, but you just do what you can, but at a really low intensity. To me, a human body it's an incredible machine, and it's made to be bloody well used, not sat in front of the telly or sat behind a screen. It's an amazing thing. It will do amazing stuff. Use it. I struggle to find a positive of not doing some degree of cardio all the time. What are the negatives of not doing cardio? This list could go on forever, but ultimately, first of all, you're going to see no improvement of VO2 max, really. I don't think you're really going to see it from strength training. I'm not saying it doesn't happen, but I think certainly VO2 max, so the widening of the base and the increasing of the sort of the high point, the peak of your VO2 max is going to be increased and improved by doing cardiovascular work. A negative is you're going to actually miss out on any additional cardiovascular health, positive interventions. Again, strength training is great, and you might get a high heart rate and you're exerting yourself. However, it is different to some sort of long form endurance work. Now, when I say endurance, I'm not talking about running marathons and stuff like that, but getting 10K steps in, stuff that is not CNS taxing, like doing 10K steps, maybe under a 10 kilogram weighted vest, is not, you can always take another step. Always. You could always take another step. You can't always do another rep because eventually your muscles can't contract. Okay. But you can always do another step. So I think that low intensity style has a benefit. And I think overall less what we would call NEAT, so non-exercise activity, thermogenic. So in other words, the work that you're doing that is not designated fitness time, if you're not doing enough of that, then when it comes down to what most people need to do, which is burn body fat, get leaner, get healthier, I think you're going to have a really tough time. So look, those are just my lists. It was a really interesting debate in my own mind to try and find a way of arguing each side. I certainly, when I've been cutting for shows, obviously cardio levels go up through the roof. Eventually, they don't start there. For example, a client has come on board this week who is in reasonable shape, wants to get in the best shape of his life, and is currently doing something like 35 kilometers of biking a day. That's quite a lot, right? I don't know what it is in miles, but 35 kilometers of biking a day. One of the first things I'm going to do is try and stop that person doing that. And of course, the person's going to say, but I'm here to get shredded. And I'm going to be like, I know. So we're going to need that type of cardio and that type of exertion later down the road. How about we just use better control of food, better control of macros, better strength training, better sleep, lower stress? How about we pull on higher hydration? How about we pull on those levers first? Because I bet I can get this person way, way leaner than they are now with no cardio whatsoever. So, with no cardio to start. I will still want this person doing X number of steps per day, but the 35 kilometers per day biking, that I would pull away for now, because the person is going to be strength training at the level that I'm going to want them to, and they're also going to be still doing 10K steps. Well, the 10K steps, we can say it falls under a degree of cardio. I'm telling the person to do some of those weighted, but I'm going to, in terms of getting someone shredded, I'm going to need the real cardio later down the road. Okay, so there's a time and a place for cardio and the amount of it. But for general health, general wellness, well-being, longevity, I think overall there should always be something in place, even if that's a bare minimum of 10,000 steps per day. And I do mean bare minimum of 10,000 steps. And if you don't know what you're doing, start tracking your steps. Every phone has a free pedometer in it. A pedometer is just a thing that tracks movement. It's not really the number of steps that matter. It's the amount of movement. So I keep my phone in my pocket as much as I can, so it tracks my steps, but I also have an Aura ring, and that's tracking movement of my hand. So if I go and play basketball, so one of the things I do for cardio is I'll go for 40 to 60 minutes and just shoot hoops on my own. I love it. It's outside. I get some fresh air. It's a completely different style of movement. But my ring thinks it's super high intensity because, of course, my arms are suddenly moving around, whereas normally I'm not. I'm sat at a computer. But again, that type of cardio, so me going out and shooting hoops and playing basketball, is for me very stress reducing because I do oddly have what can we say? Like inspirational thoughts. That's not what I'm thinking. Creative thoughts. Quite often I stop and I'm like, I have an idea, and because my phone's in my pocket counting steps, I'll have to pull it out quickly and maybe make a voice note or something, because while my brain is not really thinking of anything, it's just going through the motions of shooting hoops. Suddenly that's when my mind seems to go creative. And I think this can also be a benefit of doing some cardio. Weird creative time. So there you go. I hope there's been some thoughts in there that are useful. I think the roundup for me is do something. Find something that works. I know most people will find doing ellipticals, stairs, all these things super, super boring, and they can be super boring. Even for those of us who've done shows and things like that, it can be super, super boring. It depends what your goal is. If your goal is to get absolutely shredded, eventually you're going to need to do that stuff. You can also, while doing that super boring cardio, one, don't look at the bloody time. Like, turn the time off on the thing, like cover it over. Don't watch the seconds click by really slow, because it's so, you need to distract your mind. Personally, I either listen to music or podcasts. Depends what mood I'm in. I choose one or the other. Sometimes I listen to a podcast and half an hour disappears. Sometimes I just can't listen to someone talking and I want to listen to music. Use what works for you. Anyway, that will do for today. I hope you've enjoyed this. Always, please share this with someone who you know who maybe is either a cardio bunny or someone who you know might need to do some cardio. Maybe there's been something I've said that maybe you've been trying to tell them. So by all means, share the show. And we always love a review here. So if you find this podcast useful, please do go and leave us a 5-star review. Let us know what you think to the content. And also let me know what you would like to hear more of, because that's always really helpful to me to know what to record for you guys. For now, over and out.